Welcome to Figure Feedback. My name is Jeremy, and today I'm kicking off a trio of resin reviews, all from the same company, and that company is called FunCreCol, which stands for Functional, Creative, and Colorful. And they sent me along 3 of their specialty resins to try out, and the first one that I'm going to be trying is specifically for miniatures. So this is their miniature resin. Comes in this 1,000 gram or 1 kilogram bottle. There's also a 500 gram version of it as well. And as far as the price goes, check out the link in the description so that you can head over to Amazon and see what the price is now, because you know these things, the prices can go up, they can go down. So if you want to see the latest price, check out that link in the description. They say this resin is specially formulated to bring out the small, intricate details of miniatures, and it also has a brown color, which is a color that I have not used in resin before. Now, you know, the great thing about printing resin miniatures, especially with a bottle of this size, is that you can print a ton of miniatures in a 1,000 gram or 1 kilogram bottle of resin. So if you want to get into 3D printing, specifically to print miniatures, one bottle is going to take you a long way. And I already got an idea of what miniatures I want to test this out with. I'm going to be using Cast and Play's Church of Wrath line, which came out in October of this month. Cast and Play does such amazing looking miniatures, and I'm really a big fan of them. So if you want to check their stuff out, I'm also going to leave links to their Patreon as well as their My Mini Factory page so that you can see what they're up to and the type of miniatures that they have available. All right, so let me give this a good shake, put it in the printer, print some minis, and we'll see how it turns out. So here's a look at some of the miniatures that I printed out using this resin. I'm also going to make a little close up here so that you can see the nice small detail that the resin was able to produce in these figures. And Cast and Play has some very nice miniatures. They're one of my favorite producers of miniatures, whether it's their themes and especially when it comes to their sculpts. I think that they do a really good job. And as you look at these miniatures, you can see some of those details really coming out, especially on the guy in the front that has the severed heads dangling from his belt. You can see the agonizing expression nice and clearly on that severed head, as well as all the little trinkets and doodads that these characters have on them. Another thing that you have to think about when it comes to getting details on these miniatures is the type of printer that you're using. So if you're using a printer that has a nice high resolution display like a 12K screen or a 10K screen, then what you get is going to look better compared to something that's like a 2K screen or a 4K screen. So that definitely plays a role as well. But if you're using something that has a lower resolution display with this resin and you see the type of details that you can get from that resin, then that also kind of just goes to show like, yeah, this is some pretty good resin to use in order to recreate those good details. And it's not cloudy, it's not muddy. I think that everything is pretty nice and crisp on these figures, and I like the way that they look. Now let me share with you my experience with the resin itself, starting off with the smell. Now, all resins have some type of smell to it. Some are worse than others, but when it comes to the smell of this resin, I found it to be very inoffensive. Could I smell it? Yes, I could, but it was not really strong and it did not run me out of my garage. It wasn't stark. It didn't linger in the air. I found it to be just fine, so it didn't bother me. As far as the viscosity of the resin, it was nice and smooth. I think that some people will compare it to a milky consistency, and since a lot of people do that, I'm going to just switch it up a little bit and say, to me, it ran more like thin pancake batter. And having resin that's not gloopy and thick tends to be a good thing most of the time, so it was good from that perspective too. Now, as far as success rate goes, it's all going to depend on a myriad of different factors. You know, it's going to depend on temperature, it's going to depend on your settings, it's going to depend on some other things as well. But in my personal experience, I've had a lot more successes than I've had failures, but I have had failures with this resin. And usually the whole plate doesn't fail. But when I would go to print, let's say a plate of 6 miniatures, then I will have 5 that were good and 1 that failed, that happened to me a couple of times with the failed prints. And then as far as any failures on the prints themselves, not a whole lot, but it has happened, usually in the form of squishing. So there's a little bit of a squish. You can kind of see on this guy, he does not have a right arm because that was squished in the process of him printing it, so it didn't come out all that good. And then on another figure, this guy right here, there's a little bit of squish on his arms, and there's a little bit of layer separation. You probably see it like right there. You know, you probably wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't pointed it out, but I did still want to share some failures that I did see. Now, could that be fixed with different settings and whatnot? Sure. If I printed it and changed nothing, could it come out to be perfect next time? Yeah, that's also possible. Resin 3D printing can be a little bit finicky, but I do want to point out the failures that I did have with this resin. But let me tell you something about this resin that I really liked. And that is how easy it was to remove the supports. It was incredibly easy to remove the supports. I mean, they practically fell off the figures when I was taking it off of the build plate, cleaning them up, and then I wanted to be gentle so that I wouldn't break off any of the smaller pieces. But those supports were coming away so easily, it made me wonder how in the heck these even printed successfully in the first place, because just putting a little bit of pressure on those supports would just break it away. And I'm thinking maybe that's the reason why I would have a failure from time to time, because it's just so easy to remove those supports. And maybe during the printing process, it also makes it just as easy for something to not print some of the time. The way that these supports were coming off reminded me of when I would take figures with supports and put them in really hot water just to make the support removal process easier for me. That's how things felt just right off of the printer. And since it's fall now, it's not really hot in the garage, so it wasn't the ambient temperature. It was always super easy to take off. And I think that that was fantastic for helping me to keep some of the smaller details on these figures from breaking away, like the spikes here on the shoulder of this guy and on the back of his horse, and the weapons and the little accessories like this little lantern little piece here. He had two lanterns, but one of them broke off. That was my fault, but this one did not break off at all. And even though supports were connected to it, they came away so easy, and it kept this thin chain, this thin little resin chain from breaking apart. And you know how soft these things are when they're just off the printer. So whatever it is that makes that resin create those really easy to remove supports, keep doing that, because that is by far the best experience that I've had with this resin. So all in all, even though everything didn't come out 100% perfect, I am still quite happy with this resin, and I'm definitely going to keep using it, if for no other reason, the smoothness of those supports. That cannot be understated. I love how easy it was to remove these supports. It was really amazing. But now I've got a couple of more resins from this company to show you guys. So I'm going to empty out the vat of this miniature resin. I'm going to put the next batch in, and we're going to see if I can have a similar or different experience with those resins compared to what I've experienced here. But if you're interested in this, be sure to check the link in the description. It'll take you exactly where you need to go to pick up this resin for yourself. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves. I'll speak to you soon.